Good morning, everyone, and thank you again for being here. With us is Minister Haggie online, Minister Dempster, Deputy Minister of Forestry Jamie Chippett. So again, just want to reiterate that we understand it's been a stressful couple of weeks, and now we're certainly into week 3, especially stressful for individuals who obviously have had to evacuate their homes and their communities, and everyone that's tasked with battling these wildfires and managing the emergency response. But of course, we've seen the outpouring of support for all evacuees, particularly from Conception Bay North, and it's been nothing short of remarkable, but not at all surprising given who we are as Newfoundlanders and Labradorians, and always willing to step up and help their neighbors and friends. I can't say how impressive it is, the magnitude of the response to this emergency, multiple emergencies that are happening all at once. It just truly has been extraordinary. Our aircraft pilots, the firefighters have played a significant role and a dangerous role in fighting these fires, and again, cannot thank them enough. Behind the front lines, of course, there are crews of people doing valuable and meaningful work, including the RCMP, the RNC, ground search and rescue crews, aircraft maintenance personnel and dispatchers, various community emergency operations centers, town councils, community councils, all the volunteers at the various evacuation centers, including the school communities, Canadian Red Cross, Salvation Army, our partners, Newfoundland and Labrador Hydro, Newfoundland Power, and NL Health Services, and of course the Canadian Armed Forces, Canadian Coast Guard, and all the crews from across the country, most notably British Columbia, Ontario, Quebec, New Brunswick, and of course, last but certainly not least, all the members of our valued public service. I've certainly witnessed everybody in fisheries, forestry, and agriculture, and justice and public safety in particular, and all the staff and people working at the Provincial Emergency Operations Centre. They're the ones who are wearing this, and they continue to wear the responsibility of this emergency, but they do so with an unbelievable commitment and relentless determination. And their professionalism and their knowledge has been so impressive. Of course, we can't overstate the enormity of the situation over the last few weeks, as we had several major wildfires earlier this summer as well. Just further exemplifies the tireless effort and the tremendous dedication of the team of highly trained professionals, hundreds of volunteers who are working day in, day out, 24/7 to continue to keep these communities safe. So I just want to say once again to everybody that stepped up, including all their family who I know probably haven't seen them as much as they wanted to this summer, families who have made the difficult decision to cancel family summer vacations. Thank you to everybody involved. We'll move to the update on the wildfires. The incident management teams report that suppression activities on the 3 wildfire sites went according to plan yesterday. Rain and cooler weather and light winds were very positive for the suppression efforts in all areas. Weather conditions are favorable today, with all models showing various amounts of precipitation, which will help suppression efforts. There is a low ceiling, which, as we talked about yesterday, will have an impact on aerial asset deployment today, but the return to normal temperatures and moisture can assist in keeping the activity at bay. These conditions, however, are ideal for ground crews to continue their work. So while we do have the issue of not getting the air assets up in as soon as we'd like, it does certainly lend to good conditions for ground crews to fight these fires. The Kingston fire remains out of control. There was minimal growth yesterday, and it is now at 10,708 hectares. I just want to clarify that that's a jump in size from what we reported yesterday, but the fire itself did not grow over the last 24 hours. We've just had the opportunity to have more accurate mapping right now. So the fire does remain about the same size it was yesterday, which would be now close to 11,000 hectares. The western edge and southwest boundaries are quite active with open flames and smoke, but there's backburning. Our 2 Newfoundland and Labrador water bombers, 3 Ontario water bombers, and a bird dog worked the southwest boundary yesterday. And although it is a very active perimeter, there are no concerns with fire spread towards the town of Victoria. Our 5 heavy helicopters continue to work the western flank, with the majority of fire growth in this area. The heavy helicopters were successful in limiting growth on this flank. Newfoundland and Labrador and Ontario ground crews worked the timber along the northwestern edge along with the light helicopter bucketing and were successful in holding the line here. Military and volunteer firefighters worked the northern and northeastern community areas operating along road and within communities and were successful clearing hotspots there. The plan of attack today is very similar to yesterday. There'll be multiple water bombers and multiple missions and the 5 heavy helicopters. Keep in mind, of course, as I said, there will be a delay in aerial assets moving to that part of the province due to the low ceiling and the weather. I just want to let people in CBN know that at this time, which is very good news, there is no concern for communities on the Trinity Bay side and no concern for the communities in Bay de Verde and Old-Perlican. I'd heard reports this morning that some individuals were starting to have concern about the growth of the fire towards those parts of the peninsula, but we're okay. There's certainly not even close to having any evacuation alerts or evacuation orders for those communities. Those communities are safe, and the fire is still quite a distance from there as we continue to work that side of the fire. The Paddy's Pond is still 318 hectares. There's high humidity and temperatures will keep activity to a minimum, and the fuel break construction and ground suppression have helped contain the wildfire, with boundaries there continuing to hold. The focus is on the southeast, where hotspots have been detected, and there is still some fuel remaining there. The Martin Lake fire also remains out of control, but no growth there, and it remains at 1,770 hectares. The fire remains active, with many hotspots and continued smoke. Suppression yesterday included 50 firefighters involving Newfoundland and Labrador and British Columbia crews, who were supported by light helicopter bucketing and transporting crews. They were successful in establishing fire lines in all quadrants of this fire, and no tanker support was required. Forest access roads remain closed to traffic, and Route 360 remains open, and it is anticipated to stay open today with no interruptions. Yesterday there was almost 40 millimeters of rain and overnight into this morning, so that is obviously very good news. And operations plans for today will focus on the work of the ground crew working to put out hotspots. Just a further comment on the Kingston area. I know people are taking the last 2 days as positive news, and it is positive news. We are still not in a place where we can remove any evacuation alerts or evacuation orders, but we are certainly getting closer to being in a place where we can look at it and make that decision. So again, I ask individuals in that part of the province for a little bit more patience, but with this continued good weather and good suppression efforts, work with the ground crews, we're getting closer to be able to look at when when communities can be reopened. I do have some updated numbers, or more specific numbers, for some questions that have been asked this week with regards to structure loss and the notification process. Minister Haggie will have some comments on the actual notification process, but I can provide some estimated losses for what we call metered structures. So just so everybody is clear, a metered structure does not necessarily mean somebody's home. It could mean somebody's home. It could mean a shed if it has a meter on it. It could mean a commercial structure as well. So it's important to keep that in mind. We say estimated because even though this is the numbers we have to date, there is a chance there could be additional losses in these communities. There might be a side road that we haven't got to yet. There might still be some clarification that needs to be done, but this is a very good, very close number to the structure losses that we have right now. Kingston has a total loss of 12. The Adams Cove communities will be 33, Western Bay 86, Ocrapic Cove 59, and Northern Bay 13, for a total of 203. Of this, 106 people have officially been notified as of last night at 9:30 p.m. that their structures have been lost. Just to break that down a little further, of the 86 in Western Bay, we've been able to notify 61 households or structures. Ocrapic Cove and Northern Bay will be ongoing today. And Kingston, 12 individuals or 12 homes have been notified, and 33 in Small Point, Adams Cove, Blackhead, and Broad Cove have received their notification. As for total number of individuals who have been evacuated, what we do have is information related to the Canadian Red Cross and who has registered with the Canadian Red Cross. We certainly asked evacuees to register, but keep in mind that there may have been individuals who registered with the Red Cross who were not in the evacuation zones. But again, these are very close numbers of people who have been evacuated from these areas. So Small Point, Adams Cove, Blackhead, Broad Cove, there'd be 438 individuals that have registered with the Red Cross. Western Bay would be 359. Badger, which was one of the fires earlier this summer, was 580, as well as Musgrave Harbour, 879. Kingston is 86. Holyrood is 923, Conception Bay South 257, Ochre Pit Cove 121, Perry's Cove 99, Salmon Cove 614, and Paradise 761, and Burnt Point, Gull Island, Northern Bay 474, for a total number of individuals of 6,291, and the total households registered will be 3,055. No doubt, people who woke up in the St. John's area this morning could certainly smell the smoke. I think it was definitely the smokiest morning we've had in the St. John's area since these fires started. Just to note that the St. John's Regional Fire Department did advise that the Kingston wildfires were causing drifting smoke into St. John's and the surrounding areas. There was not reports of, it is not new fires. It is the smoke from the Kingston fires. And as a result, a special air advisory was issued for the St. John's metro region this morning. When we checked this morning before we came here, the index had already gone down, and it looks like it will continue to go down this morning. With that, I'll ask Minister Haggie for some comments.
Thank you very much, Premier. Again, always important to acknowledge the hard work of the volunteers and the people who have given up their time and their effort and put themselves at some risk to help here. It's not been easy. They are resilient, but also so are the Newfoundlanders of Bay de Verde. It's going to be a long process as we move from the kind of acute phase into the next stage, which is assessment and then ultimate restoration. From the point of view of assessment, I think it's really important that people realize that because of the nature of forest fires, it is not really accurate to do this any other way than on the ground. I mean, you've only got to go back if you want to look at some of the internet images from, say, Jasper and Fort McMurray and previous affairs. You cannot actually locate yourself easily. There's no points of reference. So if it's done on the ground, it's got to be done safely. We've talked about the wisdom of lifting alerts and letting folk back, and there are criteria that need to be met. Our volunteers and first responders have families, and they would like to see them at the end of the day. So safety is paramount. It's got to be painstaking as well. We've already had at least one incident that I'm aware of where someone was notified that their house had been destroyed, only to subsequently find out that that was their garage, their shed. The house itself was still intact, because it's that difficult to identify what that lump on the ground turns out to be. So the assessment process is very much dependent on fire and smoke, and it's also dependent on the weather, because on days like today, when it's actually pouring down in Gander, it's not a bad day to get folk on the ground and get groundwork done. Once a structure has been identified, and it's done on the ground, but it's also done, as the Premier referenced, with metering, and I'd like to shout out to Newfoundland Power, who've really been great corporate citizens in providing us with timely information about when meters go offline, and that is something they can do remotely and safely. We then have to go through the process of identifying who the current occupant is. And, you know, when Great Uncle Bill lived in the house, had the bill, and died 15 years ago, but nobody changed the name on the bill, it becomes somewhat of a challenge. And those are the sorts of things that we're dealing with in these rural communities. Then, if it is in a municipality, the town will bear the lead in notifying people about their property. We have social work and mental health support available on the phone and on occasion in person where these things are done that way. For an unincorporated area, that task falls to Justice and Public Safety with social work support. And for cabins and those kind of things, it will be FFA, Crown Lands, that will take the lead in doing the notification. The important thing is we want to be precise and we don't want to mislead anybody. So I hope that that explanation will help. And in terms of other comments, Premier, you know, we're still on alert. This province cannot afford another forest fire at the moment. From any aspect that you look at it, we have worn out first responders. We have maximized our resources, and they're fully deployed already. The last thing we need is something else. Hence, some of the irritating things that we have had to do to try and keep the rest of the province safe. Again, mental health under these circumstances is always a challenge. There are options. The reception centre has staff on hand. There's doorways. There's 811. There's Bridge the Gap. And there's your friends. We do better when we work together. And so I think, Premier, with that, I'll draw my remarks to a close. Be kind to people and stay safe. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Haggie. Minister Dempster.
Thank you, Premier. Good morning, everyone. I want to speak about ATVs and industrial operating permits to start. I've been receiving a number of emails and still seems to be a little bit of confusion. The ATV ban does remain in effect. Our intent is to re-evaluate after this particular order is up 11:59 tomorrow night. Certainly conditions indicate that we're moving in a better place with that. And the band, to reiterate again, check the fire weather index, and if it's high, very high, or extreme, you cannot use your ATV in forested areas. It doesn't mean you can't use it on a road, and I know some folks use it to get to work in their small communities, etc. It's a similar scenario for industrial operating permits. Operating permits for use of heavy equipment or industrial activities continues to remain suspended on or adjacent to forested land when the fire weather index is high, very high, or extreme. And just for further clarity, based on some of the feedback we've gotten in FFA, forested land includes land with trees and shrubs, dry marsh or bogland, and land commonly known here at home as the barrens, many folks would relate to. If you are unsure whether your activity requires an operating permit, consult a forestry official, and information regarding local forestry offices certainly can be found on the department's website. Before I turn it back to the Premier, he started with a pretty all-inclusive list of thank yous, and we all share in the list that the Premier gave. I was sitting here and I was remembering an email I got a couple of days ago from a conservation officer on our team heading back to Goose Bay, sent me a note and said, we see a lot of thanks and acknowledgement going out to the forest fires and everyone basically from those in the air to those doing the mop-ups when conditions allow. But he said, we haven't seen a lot on our partners. And so I want to toss a big bouquet, add to the Premier's huge list he gave out, to those partners that are at home, still working full-time and doing a heavy lift. This particular guy was going home after not seeing his two little boys for more than a month. So that meant that the partner was at home really doing a heavy lift. And those guys who sometimes I share flights with him from Labrador going home, rotational workers, and they've come home and chose to volunteer. Many, more than 100 folks out there volunteering, and so that means that somebody is doing double duty at home. We see you and we appreciate you. My final comment, the Premier shared a lot of numbers today. For those of us sitting up here, it was 12 structures in this town and 20 structures in another town. But for those of you sitting in the evacuation centers or with family and friends, we know that that means so much more to you. You're wondering what tomorrow's going to bring and how you're going to start to rebuild. And so we just want to say, as the Premier said in his statement yesterday, we're certainly in this together. And there's a whole lot of gratitude being felt right across our province because thankfully up until now, there's been no loss of life. So sometimes in the darkest of circumstance, we can still find things to be thankful for. Stay the course, and we will work with you to get you back to a better place. Back to you, Premier.
Thank you. And just two quick comments before we move on. We didn't have media avails this weekend, and we will continue to have them if necessary, but just, as things start to get a little better, we might move away from doing these media availabilities, just so the public knows as well. But of course, we will always continue to issue public advisories to advise the people throughout the province what the situation is. And the last comment I'll make when we talk about how great Newfoundlanders and Labradorians are and how great this team is. I mean, we heard from the Quebec water bomber pilots yesterday, who obviously have worked around the country and probably around the world, and they've said that they told us that this is the best place they've ever worked in terms of doing this dangerous work. And I think that is because they like the people here. I know it's because they like the staff that they're working with here. And I think it also shows how efficient this team has been in terms of getting help on the ground for these fires. So, a little piece of information that really just goes to show the efforts are paying off. People are doing everything they can, and people coming from other parts of the country can see that this is a real top-notch operation. So I want to thank everybody again, and thank you to people from across the country who've taken time out of their summers to come here to help our communities. It means a lot. Thank you. Any questions?
Can you walk us through the process of letting somebody know that their home has been lost? Of course, this is tough news to receive.
Yep. I'll ask Minister Haggie to comment on that, please.
Yes, certainly, Premier. Thank you very much. A little glitch with the audio there. Certainly, I think even the people in the reception centres acknowledge that making those calls has been very hard on the staff. We have, as the Premier said, not informed everyone yet of their structures because we have wanted desperately to avoid missteps. It is equally bad to tell someone that their house has gone when it hasn't, as to tell someone that their house is intact when it really isn't. And as I said, the only way of doing this actually is boots on the ground. I hope that deals with the question, Premier.
Thank you.
From the province's perspective, how did resource coordination go with the federal government, and what is that process looking like now?
Yeah, so I can ask Jamie to comment, but the first steps, of course, are contacting the federal agency who make the decision about deploying provincial assets. So we put that call in almost immediately as soon as we knew we were going to need more assets. We were fortunate to get some here very quickly. I had a conversation with Premier Legault as well about Quebec assets, and those Quebec water bombers have now been here for a couple of weeks, really. So we were happy to get some help immediately, and then as we worked through the fires and as Paddy's Pond fire started and as Martin Lake started, continue to work on getting more assets here. As I said, I'd rather have more assets than not enough. If we overpay a little bit for getting things like the Blackhawks here from Utah, so those are privately contracted. I think that's the right decision. I know that's the right decision. We do everything at all costs to make sure we do everything we can to protect the communities. So, there's two real things there. There's working with the federal agency, there's working with provincial partners, and then there's working with private contractors as well. Jamie, I don't know if you have anything to add.
Just to add, in terms of coordination, we really rely on our incident command teams. Just a little bit of context. People will remember the 2022 fires in Central. That was one of the first times in a number of years we needed an incident command team. This year we've had 6 or 7 examples when we needed an incident command team. So I guess I'd like to take the opportunity to thank our incident commanders. And I won't list them all, but they really are the experts that make the decisions on how those assets are deployed. So we've certainly had no hiccups in terms of deployment based on the experts that we're lucky to have.
I'll just add to working directly with the federal government and ministers with regards to Canadian Air Forces and Coast Guard deployment as well.
I know one of the features that was mentioned about the Black Hawk helicopters was that they can fly at night. Have they been used for the Kingston wildfire yet, and have they been used at night?
They haven't been used. They have been used. They have not been used yet at night. We're working with the Federal Aviation Agency to get clearance for them to fly at night. So we did talk about this morning, trying to get a little bit more urgency with our federal partners to get that clearance.
Can you explain a bit more what goes into that and why that clearance hasn't been given yet?
Yeah.
I don't have a lot of information on that. I know it involves not only Transport Canada, but the FFA and the United States as well. So 2 approvals were asked for, and we got the one to bring them into Canada and to allow them to work here. But it remains outstanding in terms of them being able to fly at night.
Did government know that they weren't able to fly at night before they?
Yeah, we knew we had to work through a process, but it wasn't an easy task to even get them here to fly during the day. There were some logistics and steps that we had to get over and hurdles to get over to get them here for the day. So That is a help, of course. There's 2 extra heavy helicopters now working on these fires, so there's still upside in them being here. There'll be additional upside, of course, if we can get over that other hurdle to fly them in the nights.
Have there been other barriers with federal agencies or the federal government?
I wouldn't say there's been any barriers. There's been logistics to work through. But when you think about all the assets here on the ground, even comments yesterday, and you see people out at the Torbay Airport who are, I guess, plane enthusiasts and watching all kinds of different assets that they've never seen before here land in St. John's and in Gander as well. There's been a lot of air assets that have landed here and helped out over the past 2 weeks.
Do you have any sense of buyer's remorse that you brought in these helicopters that you were hoping to use at night and now you can't?
No, because we're still using them throughout the day, so definitely no buyer's remorse there. And we still may be able to use them in the night. We're working through that process right now. But again, the fact that they're there all day while they're here is obviously a big help.
I'd just add to that, if I could, Premier, the fact that these machines are in incredibly high demand. The market is incredibly competitive, so the fact that we were able to get 5 helicopters that can bucket 1,100 gallons in comparison to a 415 water bomber that drops 1,600 helicopters, along with the agility that those helicopters provide in terms of working specific hotspots. There's certainly no buyer's remorse on our part.
The wording around the Paddy's Pond fire probably sounds relatively reassuring for someone who's not an expert. You said, the fuel break has helped contain the wildfire, the boundaries continuing to hold. Can you explain to people what goes into the process of classifying something as out of control and being held, and why that shift hasn't been made yet?
So it is a discussion and an evaluation that occurs not only daily, but, multiple times throughout the day. Certainly, we would want to see a very minimum occurrence in terms of hot spots and so on. And I think Premier mentioned in the update there is some fire activity that was occurring on the south portion of that fire yesterday. But we do think that the weather today will certainly help, and that will increase the frequency of those discussions about changing the status on that fire.
And just a note on the Paddy's Pond fire, the ground crew working there are doing obviously incredible work. They're very anxious to move to the next level because they want to go to Kingston and help there too.
That was my next question. At what point, you feel safe enough about this fire to move the firefighters from BC and the Canadian Armed Forces to Kingston?
We're getting there, obviously. We're getting closer. We've certainly removed the air assets from the Paddy's Pond fire, so that decision has been made to we only need the ground crews there now. So obviously the next step will then be if we can take away some, if not all, of the ground crews from there and move it to the other fires.
Last year, residents in Labrador got $1,000 after they were evacuated. Now, residents here are getting $500. Why is that?
So the initial decision with regards to Labrador, and I can let Minister Dempster talk as well, certainly they had to drive longer distances to get to their evacuation centres. Their stay, their evacuation date was shorter than what we're facing right now. So I know I said yesterday that we weren't really looking at increasing the amount. I guess my point really was, given that the $500 would cover the 2 weeks, we felt it was appropriate and continue to feel that's an appropriate policy going forward. And we will clarify this, have a specific policy going forward once this fire season is over. But in the event that this, which very much likely will drag on into weeks and potentially months, we will certainly look at revisiting the amounts for individuals that can't go home for an extended period of time. Minister Dempster?
I think Premier may have hit on it, but really the distance was a very big thing. Labrador is a very big land, quite spread out, and so folks had to travel about 600 kilometres just to get into central Labrador. Up until that point, it was the largest evacuation in our province's history. So we had 10,000 people that were in Happy Valley Goose Bay. That would have been about a 1,200 kilometre return trip, but many of them, we worked the ferry system and worked with the service provider at Labrador Marine at that time, and many of them, just because of the pressures that was on central Labrador, moved on to the island to go back and stay with family and friends. So that resulted in them being about, a 2,000-kilometre return trip. So it was really staggering the distance and the cost of gas and things like that where they had to go would probably definitely be the biggest difference here, where Musgrave Harbour we had about an hour, and that's what we've been dealing with, or Badger about 20 minutes from Grand Falls. So certainly was a big difference in the cost there, but as the Premier said, we'll continue to evaluate this going forward.
You said that Ochre Pit Cove and Northern Bay residents will be notified of structural losses today, if I didn't get that wrong. And you also said that 61 out of 86 losses or 61 out of 86 residents in Western Bay have been notified. And Minister Haggie, you also spoke to kind of the difficulties of you want to be sure about the losses before you notify someone. And what is the plan going forward to notify the rest of these?
So I'll give you
people?
some, don't mean to cut you off, sorry. Sorry, one of the metered structure in Western Bay was post office. 10 telephone numbers are not in service, so that just goes to Minister Haggie's point. This can be a difficult process. 9 people didn't answer their phones after multiple attempts, so voicemails have been left when possible. So those are some sort of reasons why, those are the reasons why only 61 out of the 86 have been notified, but we'll continue to work through that. Okay, thank you very much, everybody. Stay safe.